everyone. I know that you are getting back from your weekend, and I noticed a couple things regarding the concept to independent population means that didn't necessarily go so well during the exam. So I decided to, discuss that with you all. Um, we have to believe that you can do it. I know that this is challenging for some of us. This is the beginning of the quarter, but at the same time, we have opportunities for us to grow and learn from this experience. Okay, so be aware of that. So that being said, today we're going to review this problem from the exam and be able to figure out how we can improve upon our performance. Okay. Okay, so the problem is a telecom company studied the monthly service charges for 20 customers and if those customers have dependents in the household. Summaries of the measurements appear below. Okay, and so here the dependents, we have no and yes. If they do have dependents, either they do or they don't. Sample sizes and the sample mean in terms of um, the service charges as well as the standard deviations. And so then from there, we also have the standard deviation, which measures the variability, and the mean represents, or at least measures the center within the sample for each of the groups. And you're asked to create a 95% confidence interval for mu n minus mu I, known yes. And it's reported to be between negative $44.47 and $20.13. All right, so your um, responsibility is to interpret this interval in the context of this study. So before we actually interpret this, let's actually do a brief review of some statistical concepts. So some statistical concepts that we should be cognizant or aware of when we're doing this or working on this is first of all the response variable. The response variable is going to be the monthly service charges. The explanatory variable is going to be whether the customer has dependents or not. The monthly service charges are going to be quantitative. It's going to be a quantitative variable, and whether the customer has dependents or not is kind of a binary. Okay, and so it's imperative that we actually take time to be cognizant or at least notice the parameter of interest regarding this confidence interval. Okay. So when it comes to parameter of interest, we're looking at the difference in the population means for no and yes. More specifically, the difference regarding the population mean of yes being subtracted from no. Okay. And so when it comes to the confidence interval, we're interested in figuring out the range of plausible values for this difference. The range of plausible values for this difference. Okay. So then from there, we will continue. Now that we discussed the concepts, we can actually take a moment and actually visualize this data. I know that it wasn't shown to you on the quiz, but in terms of other assessment, I think it's imperative that we actually take a moment and actually look at this. So when it comes to the actual visualization, it's important to note that the box plots don't provide the mean. And so what I did is I provided the yellow and purple points to denote the mean for each of the types, no and yes. Um, and we got to remember what the parameter of interest is. The parameter of interest is the difference between the population means. And we're finding a range of plausible values. So we're not necessarily finding the range of plausible values for yes in terms of the charges or for no in terms of the charges. We're looking at the difference. Okay, we're looking at the ranges of the difference. Okay, and so here you can see that they're not the same. I would argue they're not the same, but they're not far from one another in terms of just eyeballing it. Okay, just for just looking at it. Okay, and again, this is important to note in terms of, at least visually speaking, in terms of trying to get a better understanding regarding the parameter of interest, okay, the difference between the yellow and purple points, okay, at least in terms of the sample. While at the same time, it's important to note the variability difference that we saw in terms of the summary statistics that the variability within the no group is a lot smaller in comparison to the yes group in terms of dependence. Both of them do have outliers. These points do represent outliers, but it's also the case that yes also has more variability than no. Okay, okay. Let's keep on going. Let me look at the visualizations. We can take some time to talk about the correct way of actually approaching this problem. So the correct interpretation um, of the confidence interval will be we are 95% confident that the difference between dependence, no or yes, population mean of monthly service charges is between negative 44.47 and 20.13 or $20.13. Okay, we're 95% confident. Okay, the difference between the dependence, showing as population means of monthly service charges is between negative $44.47 and $20.13. Okay, why is this correct? Because remember, the parameter of interest is regarding the difference. Okay, it's regarding the difference. We're finding a range of plausible values for the difference, not of the particular charges. It's important for you to note that. Okay. The difference whether a customer has dependence no yes regarding the population mean of monthly service charges, mu n minus mu y. Okay. And it's also imperative to be cognizant of to be aware of the population of interest, all customers with dependence and all customers without dependence. Okay. We're looking at two independent groups, okay? And the actual statistic that we're after for each of these groups is the average, which is a measure of center of the monthly service charges. And more specifically, we're looking at the difference between the two different groups. Okay. And so when it comes to interpreting confidence intervals, we have to understand that we are not just looking at one group regarding two independent population means, we're looking at the difference between these two groups. Okay. So let's look at some misconceptions. The very first misconception that I noticed regarding the students' responses, or at least you all's responses, is that a lot of you all mentioned that that the interval demonstrates that customers without dependence have the same monthly service charge as customers with dependence on average. That is not the case. That's not how we interpret the confidence intervals. This issue happens every single year, but it's nice for us to address it. So 0 is a plausible value. I 1,000% agree with that. I do agree with that. 0 is a plausible value. But then at the same rate, so is negative 18.58, or negative 10.12, or 19.2. Those are also plausible. Again, we don't necessarily know what the population means are. We're going to give an estimate, but it's plausible for based on the data that the difference are these particular values. Granted, that it can be 0. It's possible that there is no difference, but it's also possible that the difference could be also be 2.46. Okay. There are again many other plausible values. Okay, in terms of the difference between the population means. Okay. So remember, that's what we're after. We're after the difference between the population means. And remember, in terms of the Stat 251 concept, we will never ever know what the population means are, so we can't necessarily say definitively that the actual difference is this one value. That's really important. Okay? Let's go on to misconception 2. All right, so some students indicated that this interval must be correct because monthly service charges cannot be negative. Okay. However, that's not what's happening here. Again, the parameter of interest is the difference, not of a particular level or category of categorical binary variable. So we have the difference between these means. So the confidence interval estimates the difference between means without dependence mean of charges minus the dependence mean of charges, those that have dependence. So the difference will be negative when the customers without dependence mean of charges is less than the customers with dependence mean of charges. Okay, so that's possible in terms of the difference. If no, if the sample mean of no is less than the sample mean of yes, and you take the difference by subtracting yes from no, it's going to have a negative difference. Again, we're after the difference, not the actual average monthly charge of just one of the category levels. Okay, that's important to know. Okay, so since our difference is 12.17, that being said, that's our estimate of the difference between the population means of no and yes, which is the midpoint of the confidence interval, which gives us a negative difference. Also, a negative difference here means that no dependent customers mean of service charges is less than a dependent customer mean of service charges. Okay, so it's important to also note that. Okay, last but not least, okay. All right. So others suggested that 95% of customers without dependents have monthly service charges that are somewhere between $44 and 47 cents less to $20.13 more than customers with dependents. Um, in terms of the statement, it's not logically correct. Again, when it comes to confidence intervals, we're trying to estimate a range of plausible values for our parameter of interest, which in this particular case is the difference between population means, and our statement needs to reflect that estimation, whereas this doesn't necessarily. Okay, we're looking at means, not individuals, in terms of um, what's happening here. Okay, so be aware of that. What that means, not individuals. And just for funsies, I also provided another visualization of our data in terms of the overlap regarding these two different groups. In that, what I mean by the overlap is that these two groups are very, very similar regarding um, the actual data point. So it makes sense that we saw zero. We were able to observe zero within the lower bound and upper bound. Which that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the same, but it just that result is can be seen here in this visualization. All right. So with that being said, thank you for taking the time to watch this, and hopefully this is a great review for you all in terms of the concepts that we've discussed. I look forward to giving you an additional package for you to work on, and I hope that this opportunity allowed you to learn more. And that you all can do better next time. Thank you.